Neurologist, these 4 daily habits are silently shrinking your brain. After 50, consider this. When was the last time a simple everyday word, one you've used countless times throughout your life, vanished from your mind's grasp? Not a complex term, not a forgotten name, but a word that felt as though it were perched on the very precipice of your consciousness, stubbornly refusing to be retrieved. Many who experience this frustrating phenomenon attribute it solely to the march of time. I'm getting older, they tell themselves, rationalizing it as an inevitable consequence of aging that happens to everyone, and consequently, they often dismiss it without further thought, or, crucially, without mentioning it to their healthcare provider. However, as a neurologist with over 20 years of experience sitting across from countless patients who echoed this sentiment, I must impart a critical message. This seemingly minor lapse is not simply a marker of aging. It is, in fact, your brain's urgent plea for assistance. The underlying process neuroscientists refer to as brain atrophy, the gradual and measurable reduction in brain tissue over time, is a biological reality. It's true that some degree of brain volume loss is a natural part of aging, with the brain diminishing by approximately 5% per decade after the age of 40. This biological component is undeniable. What is not immutable, however, is the rate at which this shrinkage occurs. Decades of research using advanced brain imaging techniques have illuminated a profound truth. Your current lifestyle, the seemingly innocuous daily routines you engage in, are either actively fortifying your brain against decline or, conversely, accelerating this process. The most insidious aspect of this is that the habits contributing most significantly to this damage are often those that no one has ever advised you to be wary of. I have witnessed firsthand, in individuals of exceptional intelligence and diligence, the slow, silent progression of cognitive changes because they simply lacked this vital information. This realization is the impetus behind my decision to create this video. My name is Dr. Laura Chen, and for over 15 years, I have dedicated my clinical practice to the intricate field of cognitive decline, memory loss, and the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. I have meticulously reviewed thousands of brain scans, navigated the challenging conversations that no family wishes to have, and, most importantly, I have had the profound privilege of witnessing individuals make tangible changes to their routines, thereby actively protecting their brains in ways that are unequivocally supported by scientific research. Today, I will guide you through 4 specific daily habits that current neuroscience research has directly linked to accelerated brain shrinkage, particularly after the age of 50. These are not vague suggestions or generic pleas to eat better or sleep more. Instead, I will present 4 distinct, named, and research-backed patterns that I consistently observe in my patients and that have been corroborated by the latest neuroimaging studies. These are habits that may appear entirely harmless, but carry significant consequences. Crucially, I will also provide actionable alternatives, because my aim is to equip you with knowledge and solutions, not to foster fear. Please, stay with me for this vital discussion. I also intend to share a particularly poignant patient story at the conclusion of this video, one that resonates deeply with me and that I believe will underscore the importance of this information. But first, it is essential to grasp the fundamental mechanism at play. Picture your brain as a bustling metropolis, a complex living organism operating at peak efficiency during daylight hours. Think of the constant flow of traffic, the ceaseless demand for power, the ongoing construction and development. As night descends, the city deploys its dedicated maintenance crews, its repair teams, and its sanitation services. Their critical task is to clear away the debris from the day's activities, mend minor fissures before they escalate into significant structural problems, and ensure the entire system is primed and ready for the challenges of the following day. After the age of 50, this vital maintenance crew experiences a natural reduction in size. This is a normal biological shift. The brain's capacity for self-repair becomes slightly less efficient, and its ability to generate new neurons, a process known as neurogenesis, may not occur at the same accelerated pace as it once did. Certain areas, such as the frontal cortex and the hippocampus, the region paramount for the formation of new memories, become particularly susceptible to the effects of time. However, the truly pivotal insight, the one that fundamentally alters how you should perceive your daily life, is this: the capacity and efficacy of this nightly maintenance crew are not solely dictated by your age or your genetic predisposition. They are profoundly influenced, fortified, or diminished by the conscious choices you make each and every day. Through the remarkable advancements in MRI technology, offering a resolution far exceeding that available even 2 decades ago, neuroscientists have identified that certain commonplace daily habits are not merely failing to support the brain's restorative processes, they are actively impeding them. These habits are not passively allowing damage to occur, they are actively contributing to it. And there are 4 specific offenders. The first habit requires careful introduction, as I anticipate your immediate thoughts. You might be thinking, I exercise, I walk, I attend my yoga classes, and I wholeheartedly encourage you to continue these beneficial activities. They are indeed invaluable. However, what I am about to discuss is a practice that even my most physically active patients sometimes overlook or misunderstand. A seminal study published in the esteemed journal Alzheimer's and Dementia, a leading publication in my field, unequivocally confirmed this finding. The habit in question is prolonged sitting, not as a replacement for exercise, but as an additional factor impacting brain health. Researchers at Vanderbilt University's Memory and Alzheimer's Center conducted a comprehensive 7-year study monitoring the movement patterns of over 400 older adults using wrist-worn monitors. This provided precise, objective data, capturing not just what participants recalled doing, but their actual activity levels. The results were remarkably clear. Individuals who spent more hours sitting each day exhibited accelerated brain shrinkage and a corresponding measurable decline in cognitive function over the study period. What is particularly striking is that this association persisted even among participants who were diligently meeting the recommended weekly exercise guidelines. To reiterate, even if you are regularly engaging in physical activity and achieving the recommended 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week, the sheer volume of time you spend seated is still demonstrably linked to an accelerated rate of brain atrophy. But what is the biological mechanism behind this phenomenon? When you remain sedentary for extended periods, blood flow to the brain experiences a significant reduction. The intricate network of vessels responsible for delivering vital oxygen and nutrients to your neurons, the microscopic capillaries that permeate your prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, become less efficient. This reduction in vascular health can lead to increased inflammation within the brain tissue, and the crucial connections between brain cells, known as synaptic density, begin to thin. Furthermore, research has specifically highlighted the medial temporal lobe, the region housing the hippocampus, as being particularly vulnerable to the detrimental effects of prolonged sitting. A study employing MRI scans meticulously examined the daily sitting duration of adults aged 45 to 75 and then correlated this with the thickness of their medial temporal lobes. The findings were consistent. Individuals who reported the longest periods of sitting tended to possess a measurably thinner medial temporal lobe. Importantly, thinning in this specific region is recognized as one of the earliest structural indicators of memory impairment. Before I offer the solution, it is imperative to understand one additional layer of complexity. The Vanderbilt study also revealed that the detrimental impact of prolonged sitting was significantly amplified in individuals carrying a specific gene variant known as APOE epsilon 4. This gene is widely recognized as the strongest genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. Therefore, if this gene variant is present in your family history, the habit of prolonged sitting transcends a minor concern. It represents a direct neurological hazard. The corrective measure is not complex, nor does it necessitate an increase in your exercise regimen. It centers on the principle of interrupting sedentary time. Consistent research demonstrates that breaking up periods of inactivity by simply standing and moving for even 2 to 5 minutes every 45 to 60 minutes is profoundly effective in preserving blood flow to the brain, a benefit that a single extended exercise session cannot fully replicate. The practical implementation is straightforward. Set a timer. Stand up, walk to the kitchen, perform 5 slow shoulder rolls, then you may resume your seat. This simple act of periodic interruption is a genuine and potent form of brain protection. I personally advocate for what I term the 50-minute rule with my patients. 50 minutes of seated activity followed by a mandatory 5-minute break of movement. This is non-negotiable for optimal brain health. Now, I must address a subject that I recognize may be uncomfortable for many. When my patients disclose a history of years of poor sleep, waking consistently at 2 a.m., struggling to initiate sleep, experiencing profound daytime fatigue, yet remaining wide awake at night, and then casually dismiss it by stating, "Oh, that's just how I am," I genuinely understand their perspective. Our culture has, unfortunately, cultivated a tendency to frame sleep disturbances as mere personality quirks rather than serious medical issues. People often wear them almost as badges of honor, declaring, "I'm just a light sleeper." However, my professional obligation compels me to be forthright with you. I have witnessed the tangible impact of years of inadequate sleep on brain scans, and it is far from just fine. A groundbreaking study conducted at the University of California, San Francisco surveyed approximately 600 adults regarding their sleep quality and subsequently scanned their brains a decade later. The findings were alarming. Participants who reported the greatest difficulties with sleep exhibited brains that were, on average, biologically 2.6 years older than those of individuals who slept well. This was not a superficial observation. It was a structural reality, characterized by measurably increased atrophy as evidenced by neuroimaging, a staggering 2.6 years of accelerated brain aging, attributable solely to sleep quality. Furthermore, a separate, large-scale investigation published in eBiomedicine, encompassing nearly 27,000 individuals, corroborated this pattern. Poor sleepers, in essence, possessed brains that appeared significantly older than their chronological age on MRI scans. The significance of these findings was so pronounced that the 2024 Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention formally recognized sleep disorders as an emerging yet modifiable risk factor for dementia. So, what precisely transpires within the brain during periods of poor sleep to precipitate this accelerated aging? This is the crucial aspect I implore you to grasp, as it possesses the power to fundamentally transform your perception of sleep. While you are asleep, particularly during the deep, slow-wave phases, your brain activates a remarkable intrinsic cleaning mechanism known as the glymphatic system. Envision this as your brain's internal drainage system. During these restorative periods, specialized channels open, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to permeate the brain tissue, effectively flushing out toxic waste proteins that have accumulated throughout the day. The most critical of these proteins is amyloid beta, a substance that, when it fails to be cleared and consequently aggregates, forms the characteristic plaques that are the definitive pathological hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. When your sleep is compromised, this essential drainage system does not function optimally. Amyloid beta is not adequately cleared, leading to its accumulation. Over years and decades, this nightly deficit in deep sleep is now understood to be one of the earliest triggers in the pathological cascade of Alzheimer's disease. This next point is one that the vast majority of my patients have never encountered from any prior source, and it is one that I most urgently wish for you to take to heart. The remedial measures begin with what is commonly referred to as sleep hygiene, a term that, due to its widespread and often superficial usage, has unfortunately lost much of its impactful meaning. Therefore, allow me to be exceptionally precise. Ensure your bedroom is kept cool, ideally between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Crucially, dim all artificial lights at least 1 hour before bedtime. This includes not only overhead overhead lighting, but perhaps more importantly, the luminous glow emitted from your electronic devices. Light of any intensity signals to your brain that it is daytime, thereby suppressing the production of melatonin, the hormone essential for facilitating deep, restorative sleep. Furthermore, if you find yourself consistently waking between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. for an extended period, I implore you, as your viewer and as a professional dedicated to your well-being, to discuss this pattern with your doctor. Such persistent nocturnal awakenings can be indicative of treatable underlying conditions, and addressing them holds a significance for your brain health that arguably surpasses many other factors on this list. Now, I wish to pose a question to you, and I urge you to answer it with complete honesty, not for my sake, but entirely for your own. Is there something currently present in your life, a persistent burden that you carry daily, which you would describe as ongoing worry? I am not referring to the acute, time-limited stress associated with navigating a crisis. Rather, I am alluding to the persistent, low-grade hum of anxiety. This could manifest as financial pressures, navigating a challenging family dynamic, the demanding responsibilities of caring for an aging parent, or the slow, pervasive grief that accompanies the realization that your own health requires ongoing management. In essence, is there a source of stress that has been a constant presence for more than 6 months? Because this sustained chronic state, which neuroscientists label as HPA axis dysregulation, triggers the release of a hormone you are undoubtedly familiar with, cortisol. In short, controlled bursts, cortisol serves a beneficial purpose. It sharpens your focus, modulates inflammation, and aids your body in effectively responding to immediate challenges. Indeed, acute stress, when it is brief and subsequently resolved, can even stimulate the creation of new brain cells. However, chronic stress, prolonged, unrelenting, and unresolved, has a diametrically opposed effect. The hippocampus, the brain region designated as your memory center, possesses a higher density of cortisol receptors than nearly any other area of the brain. It is exceptionally sensitive to this stress hormone and consequently uniquely vulnerable when exposure to elevated cortisol levels is sustained. A comprehensive review of research published in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience unequivocally demonstrated a direct correlation between elevated cortisol levels and reduced hippocampal volumes. This shrinkage, in turn, was associated with measurably poorer memory performance, even in individuals who were otherwise deemed healthy. The researchers posited that cortisol might serve not only as a biomarker for Alzheimer's risk, but also as an early and crucial target for preventive interventions. Further substantiating these findings, a study published in the esteemed journal Neurology meticulously measured cortisol levels in the blood of over 2,000 healthy, middle-aged adults. Concurrently, their memory and cognitive functions were assessed and their brains were scanned. The results were compelling. Participants, particularly women, exhibiting higher cortisol levels consistently performed worse on cognitive tests and, over the duration of the study, demonstrated greater brain volume loss. I urge you to contemplate this information for a moment. The neurological literature is increasingly highlighting that the cumulative burden of stress experienced by women, often borne silently and for decades, is not without profound biological consequences. These effects are not abstract. They are measurable and are evident on brain scans. Now, for a glimmer of hope, the detrimental effects of chronic cortisol elevation are, to a significant and meaningful degree, reversible. Research conducted on patients diagnosed with Cushing's disease, a rare condition characterized by the body's excessive production of cortisol, revealed that when cortisol levels were successfully reduced through treatment, hippocampal volume actually showed signs of regeneration and increase. The brain demonstrated a capacity for recovery. Therefore, engaging in stress reduction is not a mere act of self-indulgence. It is a fundamental neurological imperative. The strategy I recommend to my patients is a practice I call cortisol bookending. This involves 2 brief 5-minute interventions, one performed in the morning and another before retiring for the night, specifically designed to lower cortisol levels. In the morning, dedicate 5 minutes to slow, deliberate nasal breathing before you engage with your electronic devices. Inhale for a count of 4 and exhale for a count of 6. This practice effectively activates the parasympathetic nervous system, often referred to as the rest and repair system, and scientific studies confirm that it measurably reduces cortisol levels within minutes. In the evening, before bed, take a few moments to write down 3 things that are not perceived as threats. These can be small, genuine occurrences from your day that went well, or things for which you feel grateful. This practice is not about cultivating forced positivity. Rather, the deliberate act of processing non-threatening information actively downregulates the HPA axis. These are not merely wellness platitudes. They are grounded in established biological mechanisms. Now we arrive at the 4th habit. I wish to introduce this with care, acknowledging the inherent complexities surrounding food and diet. I understand that altering your eating habits can feel overwhelming, and the mere mention of the word diet can cause many of my patients to mentally shut down. Therefore, allow me to be precise about what I am referring to. This is not about adhering to a restrictive diet. It is about a specific category of food and its documented impact on the physical structure of your brain, as evidenced by peer-reviewed neuroimaging research. The category in question is ultra-processed food. And before you assume you fully understand what this entails, let me clarify how scientists define it. Ultra-processed foods are not simply items that are unhealthy or high in calories. They are foods that have undergone industrial manufacturing processes to such an extent that they bear little resemblance to their original ingredients. Furthermore, they often contain additives such as emulsifiers, artificial flavors, preservatives, and colorings that would never be found in a home kitchen. This encompasses obvious culprits like packaged chips, sugary soft drinks, and fast food, but it also extends to items that may appear healthier, such as flavored yogurts, pre-packaged breads, even whole grain varieties with extensive ingredient lists, seasoned nuts, most breakfast cereals, and a plethora of protein bars. The reason I am highlighting this category as a direct contributor to brain shrinkage, rather than just a general health concern, is due to compelling scientific evidence. A significant study published in Neurology in 2024, one of the most rigorous journals in my specialty, followed over 14,000 adults. It found that for every 10% increase in the proportion of ultra-processed foods within a daily diet, there was a corresponding 16% increase in the risk of cognitive impairment. An additional data set within the same research indicated a correlation between higher ultra-processed food (UPF) intake and an increased risk of stroke. Moreover, a 2023 study published in JAMA Neurology, the flagship journal of the American Academy of Neurology, tracked nearly 11,000 individuals for 8 years and discovered that higher consumption of ultra-processed foods was associated with a more rapid decline in both global cognition and executive function. However, the detail that has stayed with me most profoundly, the one I find myself returning to repeatedly, comes from longitudinal data gathered by the RAIN study. This research linked high consumption of ultra-processed foods to a notable 5% reduction in hippocampal volume. This finding remained significant even after controlling for cardiovascular risk factors. A 5% reduction is not a negligible figure. It represents a measurable structural loss in the brain's most critical memory-forming region. But how exactly do these foods exert such a damaging effect on the brain? The mechanism operates through 3 primary pathways. Firstly, ultra-processed foods promote gut dysbiosis, meaning they disrupt the delicate balance of the microbiome within your digestive system. The gut and the brain are in constant, intricate communication via what scientists term the gut-brain axis. When the gut is subjected to chronic inflammation, this inflammatory state is mirrored in the brain. Secondly, these foods contribute to systemic inflammation and insulin resistance, both of which the brain is acutely sensitive to and adversely affected by. Thirdly, Ultra-processed foods are typically stripped of the essential fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and B vitamins that are vital for the brain's structural integrity and optimal functioning. It is not merely what these foods add that is harmful. It is also what they displace and prevent from being absorbed. The solution here is not about striving for unattainable perfection. Let me be unequivocal on this point. A neurologist from Harvard Medical School articulated a crucial insight for the research community. Even modest reductions in the intake of ultra-processed foods are associated with meaningful improvements in brain health outcomes. This is not an indictment demanding that you exclusively consume salmon and leafy greens from this moment forward. It is about the simple yet impactful act of reading one food label per day. It is about embracing the principles of the Mediterranean diet, not as a rigid protocol, but as a guiding preference for whole foods, olive oil, fish, legumes, vegetables, and nuts. A dietary pattern consistently linked to a significantly lower risk of Alzheimer's disease. Begin with a single dietary swap, one item you regularly consume that you can consciously replace with something closer to its natural, unprocessed form. That is it. One swap sustained over several months constitutes genuine neuroprotection. Let me now synthesize these 4 key areas, as I do not wish for you to depart with a quartet of distinct anxieties and no clear pathway forward. I encourage you to conceptualize what I have presented today as a unified framework, which I refer to as the brain shield routine. This is not a rigid, demanding schedule, but rather a commitment to 4 daily practices, each aligned with one of the habits we have discussed. The first commitment is the 50-minute rule. Every 50 minutes you spend seated, dedicate 5 minutes to standing and moving. Set an alarm on your phone. Make this practice automatic. The second commitment is sleep as medicine. Treat your sleep with the same level of seriousness and vigilance you would afford any critical medical treatment, because, in essence, it is precisely that, your brain's nightly essential maintenance protocol. Ensure your room is cool, your lights are dimmed, and if your sleep remains persistently disrupted, do not resign yourself to accepting it as an unchangeable norm. The third commitment is cortisol bookending. Dedicate 5 minutes in the morning to slow, controlled breathing before you turn to screens. Before bed each night, write down 3 things that are not threats. This practice should be performed daily, not merely when you feel overwhelmed by stress, as cortisol levels can escalate subtly and insidiously before you consciously register them. The fourth commitment is one whole food swap. This is not about embarking on a new restrictive diet. It is about making one conscious substitution each day, choosing one food item you would typically reach for and exchanging it for something that provides genuine nutritional value and can be directly utilized by your brain. None of these practices are drastic or require significant financial investment or specialized equipment. They demand only awareness, which is precisely why I have created this video. Once you possess this knowledge, you cannot simply unlearn it. And once you begin to integrate these practices into your daily life, the research strongly suggests that your brain will respond positively. Allow me to share the story of a woman I will refer to as Carol. She first consulted with me at the age of 63. The preceding year, she had retired after a distinguished 30-year career as a high school librarian, a profession I consider to be among the most intellectually stimulating. Carol was sharp, well-read, and deeply troubled by a specific concern. Over the past 18 months, she had begun to experience complete blanking on the names of books she had recommended hundreds of times. Authors she cherished, titles that felt like old acquaintances, were inexplicably vanishing from her recall. What struck me most profoundly during that initial consultation was not merely the symptom itself, but rather what she described about her life since retiring. Her cessation of work meant the discontinuation of her daily walk to the bus stop, the hours spent standing amidst the library stacks, and the constant, low-level intellectual engagement of assisting students in their quests for information. She had begun to sit more, significantly more, In the evenings, she found herself watching television and struggling to fall asleep, often lying awake for extended periods, consumed by anxieties about minor issues, finances, her adult son's well-being, or the general state of the world. Her eating habits had also shifted. Her husband had passed away the year before she retired, and in his absence, she had found herself increasingly relying on convenient, processed foods that she had never kept in the house when she was cooking for two. Upon reviewing her brain scan, I was not surprised by the findings. There was evidence of measurable hippocampal atrophy. While it was not severe and did not present the distinct profile of Alzheimer's disease, it was undeniably present. Her brain had aged at a rate that exceeded what her chronological age should have dictated. Here is the crucial message I want to convey. Carol's story is not a tragedy. Carol left my office equipped with a very specific set of actionable changes. She initiated a walking club with 2 neighbors, meeting 3 mornings a week. During the hours she dedicated to reading, she set an alarm on her watch to remind her to stand and stretch every hour. She consulted a sleep specialist, was diagnosed with a condition known as sleep maintenance insomnia, and successfully underwent treatment. 2 years later, her subsequent brain scan revealed a significant slowing of atrophy. It was not a complete reversal, but the progression was demonstrably slower. Carol shared a sentiment at that follow-up appointment that has remained with me ever since. She said, "I feel like I got my reading back. This is precisely why I am so passionate about my work. It is not because I can guarantee every patient a perfect outcome, but because I have witnessed enough Carol stories to know that the choices you make between now and 5 years from now are not inconsequential. They are, in fact, everything." Before you conclude this video, I would like to pose a question, and I sincerely hope you will consider sharing your response in the comments section below, as I genuinely wish to hear from you. Of the 4 habits we have discussed today, prolonged sitting, sleep quality, chronic stress, and processed food consumption, which one resonated most personally with you? Which one prompted you to pause and think, "That sounds exactly like me"? Please be candid in your responses. You are not expected to have all the answers or to have immediately resolved every identified issue. I read every comment submitted to this channel, and your honest feedback is invaluable. Furthermore, if you found this video to be beneficial, I kindly ask that you consider sharing it with a loved one who may be navigating similar life stages. Sometimes, the most profound act of care we can offer to those we cherish is to provide them with information they may not have realized they needed. Before you depart, I must convey a statement that I mean with the utmost sincerity, not as a mere formality. Everything I have shared in this video is grounded in current, peer-reviewed neuroscience research and my own extensive clinical experience spanning over 2 decades. This information is intended as general medical education, the kind of foundational knowledge I wish every patient possessed before seeking professional advice. It is not, however, a substitute for personalized medical care. If you are experiencing changes in your memory or cognition that cause you concern, please do not bear that worry in isolation. Do not postpone seeking professional help until these changes become undeniably apparent. Schedule that appointment now while the conversation is still in its early stages and therefore holds the greatest potential for meaningful intervention. This is not a formality. It is genuine advice from someone who has witnessed the consequences of delayed action and who profoundly believes, both professionally and personally, in your long-term well-being. My sincere hope is that you will still be actively engaging with this channel 10 years from now.